Listening in now to our leadership challenge, coming from the Colorado Water Center. So this is Jessica Crusher. She's the interim associate director of the Water Center. She has a bachelor's degree in sociology from Southern Methodist University and a master's in anthropology from CSU. She creates and directs programs that promote a diverse water workforce, representative of the community served, equitable access to water resources and information, and develops resources supporting the advancement of equity in the water field. So thank you, Jessica, for being with us today, and we're going to focus on water quality and access.
Thank you all. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I'm glad I wasn't preventing you from your lunch. I'm glad you're all eating. So we'll continue on through our presentation today. So I'm sure by this point you're well aware. Okay. You're well aware of the work that we do at the Colorado Water Center, but I just wanted to highlight kind of where I am in here is talking today about the water quality and access. And so I'll be talking about mobile home park water quality and then how to increase access to water education as well. So I want to start by talking about our work with mobile home parks. Throughout my presentation, I put a lot of QR codes because I'm only able to go high level today. And so the QR codes, which will be shared out with you, I'm sure after today, are just so you can have those links to access more information afterwards. So in talking about mobile home parks, there are a total of 57,977 units. So that's like a household and 761 parks in Colorado as a whole. Now, I broke this out by county. I know there's a lot of different counties represented here today. These are the northern water boundaries. And so I thought that would generally encompass all of the communities who are present here. But this QR code will take you to the full list of all of the communities and how they're broken out per county. And so I just wanted to kind of show, like, we have a substantial number within this northern water district of 159 mobile home parks and over 15,000, almost 16,000 units. And within each unit, there's usually not just one person. So we're talking about maybe it's 4, maybe more people per unit. So this is a substantial amount of people in our community. In 2023, June 2023, the Mobile Home Park Water Quality Act was passed. And this has the House Bill 23-1257. And there's a link that you can learn more about what that was. So in response to there being a lot of substantial issues with water quality in mobile home parks, this bill was enacted to address those. The main focus of these bills, and this is a QR code directly to that bill as well, but is to do a testing program. And that testing program was started last year in July 1st. And then by July 1st, 2028, 100% of all of the parks would have been tested. If there is a water quality issue with these tests, then there is a notification of the park owner, and then the park owner is then required to notify the residents and then start working on this remediation plan. So this is kind of step one of how to begin addressing these issues within mobile home parks.
Yeah, can you just speak a little bit more about like what led up to this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so there had been a number. I have here, these are providing some like background information about like why mobile home parks, why water quality. What I'll be getting a little bit later in my presentation about why we were involved in particular. But there have been a number of issues around the state where folks have frequent water shutoffs. They have differing water quality. They have brown water. They have and chemicals in their water. They're going to the hospital because they're sick because of their water. And so one of the representatives, Representative Elizabeth Velasco, who grew up in a mobile home park, and she is a representative for Eagle County, I believe. And so when she was elected, she just really wanted to elevate this issue and did a robust research with Beatriz Soto with Protégete, which is now it's part of Conservation Colorado. And they worked together to do some research around the different water quality in different parks as support for enacting this bill as well. So in addition, I listed these different media articles to give you more information. This isn't just issued in one part of the state. Like we're seeing these water quality issues across the state.
I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
I know that in Greeley, most of the water systems for mobile home parks are private. Is that kind of one of the reasons why this is happening?
So the way, and I learned a lot of this once, I think it's my next slide, how we got involved. Yeah, okay. So how we got involved was in 2023, a CSU student came to me and said, I wake up and I'm not sure if I will have water. I have raw sewage coming out into my yard. And I have issues with lead in my water. There was a report that there was lead in our water. And I said, what? Like in Fort Collins, like I did not know this was an issue at all. And so then I started learning about how mobile home parks are kind of set up. So the water that we have, it's the city of Fort Collins water, there's what, 5 different water providers within the city of Fort Collins. And so the municipalities provide water to the meter. Each mobile home park is treated like one house. So the meter is outside of the park. And then the mobile home park owners are responsible for all of the infrastructure within the park to each unit. And that's where the problem. And so, because the water to the meter is highly regulated, of course. But I've heard reports from different community members that their pipes are clay, that they have clay pipes for their wastewater and for their water. And what's happening is tree roots have come in and cracked those pipes. And so they're having some foaming. And so like, this is a huge issue, obviously. But in addition, the water quality issues vary from park to park. Like not everybody has the same, even issues within what they're experiencing. But not only that, it varies within the park. So when I was working with one particular mobile home park in Colorado, or in Fort Collins rather, they have older pipes near the front of the park and newer pipes near the back. And so the folks who are having those issues are the ones with the older pipes. So because of the student,
And there's no like regulation to make the mobile home park owners replace their pipes every so often, or there's no like oversight of that process.
so there is I think it's SOLA, which is the organization that oversees mobile home park. But what we are hearing from communities is that there have been a lot of complaints made, but that the complaint system has been overloaded. And so they haven't been directly responding to all of the complaints. And so, I think a lot of this, water pun intended, goes through the cracks. And so that's part of a real issue is regulatory and making sure that, park owners are held responsible, which is kind of back to the Water Quality Act. One of the intentions of the bill is to then, like, if there's a water quality issue, then the park owner has, I think, 120 days to plan, then fix it. But one of the pieces that I think is missing here is then what? Like, once they have 120 days to fix it, what are the regulatory things in place that they have to? And so, we're working a lot with our different partners, with CDPHE. And because CDPHE, they launched this, but they only have 2 staff members that are working on this issue, and there's, over 700 parks. So, how can we partner together to make sure that community members are connected with the resources they need, that there's more testing organizations that we can partner with so that it's not just on those particular staff. So, yes.
Is this specific to mobile home parks or is it RV parks as well?
So the mobile home parks and RV parks, this is specific to mobile home parks. Yeah. So after the student came to us in 2023, we started a partnership where we brought together Larimer County, the city of Fort Collins has been a tremendous partner, Serve 6.8 and the CSU Center for Environmental Justice to say, okay, lead was a concern. I had heard about the Denver Water Lead Replacement Program. I knew that they were doing lead filters. And so we found a Brita lead water filter to do a distribution in May of last year. where 400 filters were donated by Brita, actually, because the student I'm referring to reached out to Brita and was like, I have this issue, and they said, we want to be part of the solution. So they donated 400 filters so that in that particular mobile home park, every single unit received them. And so this was in response again to the specific lead issue. After that, we began meeting with more community members because, like, you know, if this is an issue in one park, are there other parks that might also need to have these same issues? So we heard kind of what I was saying earlier, these frequent boil water notices, like very frequent, or water shutoffs. Sometimes community members don't receive a boil water notice till like the end of the day, that they should have been drinking water all day. And then folks have had to go to the hospital for that. It had this bleach smell, so it's like a heavy chlorine. One of the members said to me that it was so strong, like she made a soup and couldn't eat it because it was smelled like bleach so much. And then the folks are also worried about showering in water like that. They've had rashes, and so what the result is that folks are buying bottled water because they're paying twice for water, because they don't trust the water that they are receiving. Did you have a question?
Yeah, the boiled water notices, do they fall under the same tiered public notices that municipalities do when they have like tier 1, 24 hours, tier 2, 30 days? Tier 3 is like any time in the year, like in your PCRs. I was wondering, you know, this, I don't think the municipalities have a responsibility for informing those people. It's still the mobile home park, right? Because they're private water people.
Yes, there are some public, it's like, they're private. There's a lot of nuance that I've been trying to figure out what some of these are. Some of them are listed as private, some of them are not private. And so it's been my understanding that it's still the mobile home park owners that have to notify people unless it's like outside of, the issue is outside of the mobile home park, I guess. But that hasn't been happening. And also a lot of these boil water notices, if people were receiving them, were only in English. And a lot of these constituents speak other languages, are predominantly Spanish. And so up until very recently, they were only in English. And now, because of the mobile home park residents working this, identify this issue, I believe now there is a rule. I'm not sure if it's legislation. I'm not sure if it was, you know, based by city or not. I haven't figured that out quite yet, but now that they have to be in multiple, I think Spanish in particular. Okay, so after the filter distribution and the distribution of 400 filters, we started partnering with Mi Voz and their mobile home park resident council. And so they have 2 resident leaders from each mobile home park. They don't have all of the parks in Larimer County right now, but they are growing that group of leaders to be able to work directly with the rest of the community members within those parks. And so based on what was shared with us about all the different sort of water quality concerns that that folks were having, we realized that lead filters weren't going to do it. So I started researching different kinds of filters that would be able to remove biological and non-biological contaminants. And I found Epic Water Filters, and they're a local company in Boulder. And so they have a filter called a nano filters. And so the community, the resident leaders of Mi Voz identified 3 different parks that were highest need right now. And so we are raising money. We're doing a fundraiser to raise money for 903 units across those 3 parks to be able to provide these water filters for each of them. In my communications with Epic, you know, I told them about this issue, invited them to be a partner, and so they have substantially reduced the cost of the filter and the 3 replacement filters that would provide up to a year of water for each unit to $100 per household. And so this fundraiser, Carla Bates Odell is on Leadership Fort Collins. And so Leadership Fort Collins has, and that their group has taken up this project in partnership with us to put on this fundraiser April 22nd on Earth Day to raise funds for these filters. Now, this is a short-term solution But part of the effort around this is to raise awareness of this issue, so that more people can be involved in the solution. So this link, the actual page isn't up quite yet, but this link is an interest page. So that once the event page is up, if you're interested in learning more. So when we're working with these communities, we're looking to also identify short-term solutions, while the long-term solutions we're also working on those together because they need to go hand in hand. But one of the things that folks were telling us is that people come to them and they say that they're going to help, but then they don't hear from them. And so a lot of this is within our community engagement and how we are engaging directly with communities and building trust. And so here's the spectrum of community engagement. And so we're looking to go into the empowering, obviously, a part of the spectrum where we're providing communities with the resources and tools that they need to take action into their communities. So when we're working with communities, a lot of this is kind of reframing our outlook. Are there barriers for community members to engage with our programs? One of the barriers, and I'll talk about here in a moment, is language. So how can we make sure that when we're inviting communities to come in and speak with us and hear from them, that everyone has the opportunity to be part of the conversation? Who is included or excluded in these meetings? So I think it's critical to all of us. Every single person relies on water, that everyone be a part of identifying ways to sustainably manage that going forward. So diverse representation, meaning backgrounds, education levels, perspective, experience, urban, rural, age, gender, we're looking at making sure that all of those are represented because we need all of us to move forward with this together. Your current mailing list. So I've had, folks come to me, municipalities, nonprofit groups, different water organizations, like how do we reach communities that we haven't reached before? And one of this is, think about who your current mailing lists are going to. How can you partner with other community organizations to expand your reach? And then looking at our mindset, words are really important. Issues are important. And so with, Spanish materials in particular, sometimes I've heard like, well, should we still continue to translate Spanish materials if they're not being used? And we can reframe that mindset to say, well, maybe they're not being used because we're not adequately reaching those Spanish speakers who would be needing those materials. And then the word disadvantaged communities, those are used a lot in grants. And so the word disadvantaged, to me, I've kind of internalized these words. And disadvantaged, I think, to me is like, well, those people are disadvantaged and we can't do anything about it. And I think it kind of puts that mindset on them, on those communities. And so I prefer underserved communities. We are underserving those on us to make that change. So here are, how long do I have to be?
I think questions are at,
Okay. So there's Environmental Justice Task Force that was done. It was a year-long task force, and they have a whole suite of recommendations. But I wanted to pull out some key ways that you could do engagement with them from that report. So the full report is linked up at the top. And this is in section 5, the best practices for community engagement. So really, listen and be authentic. People can tell when they're not being authentic and that you really want to incorporate those suggestions into what you're doing. I was at a conference recently and they said, people want to see their fingerprint on the eventual solution, that their feedback was incorporated and they can see themselves in those plans moving forward, which is absolutely true. Having community connections with other groups, like I mentioned before, that are already in communities. How can you work with trusted partners? Having multiple meeting times, virtual options, recordings like today, like you have today, having those in multiple languages as well, offering interpretation services. So if you're having a meeting, telling everyone right up front that there will be interpretation there so that they know that's a welcome space for them to come into. Removing any financial barriers, so payment to attend classes, offering classes for free, offering scholarships to attend classes to remove financial barriers. Providing food. Everyone loves to eat. You know, especially if we're having meetings like later in the day. Okay, no, food is good at all meals, I'll just, at all times, I will say that. But that encourages people to come to. And then childcare, you know, really thinking about how do we want to engage those who need, who want to be involved, but they need childcare. So how can you provide that for your meetings? And then valuing the community knowledge, you know, as experts in water, we're not the only ones that have valuable knowledge to share. Everyone is a water user and they have valuable knowledge about their particular communities, their particular issues. And so valuing that knowledge at the table is really important, and paying people to participate in the stakeholder events is important. So now I'm going to move to equitable access to information. Here is a link. This is from 2022. This is a link to the Colorado statistics here and the QR code as well. So 5.77 million people in Colorado. The most common languages spoken are Spanish, Chinese, and that includes Mandarin and Cantonese and German. I was surprised to learn the top three. And as I was preparing for the presentation today, obviously the highest here is Spanish speaking households with over 602,000 households, or 11% of our population speaking Spanish at home. And so that's about 22% of our population is Hispanic, and that's 1.27 million people. So that's a large percentage of our communities that haven't had access to water education materials, because the vast majority of water education is in English only. And so this is really a space that it's important for the Water Center to serve. You know, we serve all constituents. And so realizing, you know, where are places that people don't have access to information. And I love education. I've been an educator for a very long time. I believe that education is the foundation for community change, because if you don't have access to the right information, then you can't take that next step with active engagement. So here are some tools that we have used to have an inclusive spaces. Translation is really translating from like the English to Spanish words. Interpretation is when, you know, here I am speaking and then there'd be someone here next to me doing interpretation and translating the words as I'm saying them. I would say welcome. Bienvenidos. And when I was first starting this of equitable access to information, I've been doing this for quite some time now. I thought that the presentation would take double the time, because like I say something and I pause, then they say something and then you pause. But I have now worked with Community Language Co-op for multiple years, and they are truly incredible. It happens at the same time. I have no idea how they do it. It blows my mind, it really does. But they are an incredible resource, and they have folks up and down the Front Range. They do, I can't even list how many languages they do. So they do translation and interpretation services, virtual or in person. So here are just some tips on how to incorporate this moving forward. So you can translate your existing materials. I've had folks ask me, well, like we have a lot of materials, like how should we prioritize that? And I would say start with the ones that that are most relevant. Your newest materials, the ones that are most pressing issues. And then once you have those translated, make sure that you're translating everything moving forward, you know, so that you don't have to then get a grant or provide resources to then duplicate, you know, do it at the same time. And then decide, you know, strategically what resources you would like to kind of backdate with your translation. And then offering, again, those bilingual or multilingual classes, creating resources in other languages. And then, like I mentioned, the last point already. So here's just some examples of ways that we have done this. I have a rain barrel page and a rain garden page. And so these have English and Spanish recordings. And then I created an installation guide, and that's in English and Spanish. So you can look at those to see like how we've done that, and maybe get some ideas for how you can do that too. And here's another, we have an entire page that has those resources incorporated into that. And I learned a lot as I was trying to do bilingual events with a steep learning curve. I've done it very poorly. And so because of that, I was at another conference and someone was like, when we're learning and we're doing it at the same time, it's like, then we can tell other people like, watch out for that thing that you don't want, you know? So I created this PDF of a step-by-step guide on how to do a successful bilingual event with like, first of all, how to find your Zoom, like, do you have interpretation in your Zoom, like where to look, how to set that up, how to find an interpreter, etc. So I hope this is helpful for you. If you have questions about that moving forward, as you are looking to do them, please let me know. I'm always happy to help with that. The last bullet here, the recording in multiple languages. Oh, there is like a special secret that you have to know to record in 2 languages simultaneously. And you can do it, you just have to know how to do it. And so, just want you to know that that it is possible, you just have to know how to set it up. So kind of in conclusion here, how to get started. Just start thinking about your organization, and the work that you do, and what languages is if you're doing water education or education in general, like what languages is it provided in? How could this potentially be expanded upon? Are you on a board, commission, or public office? And what perspectives are missing? What perspectives are included? How can you expand that? And if you're a funder, how can your grant language be changed for accessibility, and thinking about, your leadership in the community, and making sure that those voices are represented, and the meetings that you're going to or attending, or the classes or engagement events, that those are accessible to others. So here's my contact information. If you have, and I'll open it up for questions, but I am always here we're very committed to being a resource for others and providing those lessons learned from how we've done this and moving forward. Yes.
There were the other subgroups when you were talking about different language speakers, so like Chinese language speakers, German language speakers. Are there communities where these like in the specific neighborhood in Denver, that's where all the people who are speaking German at home live, or is it diversified across the state? I would think that it's not, but maybe it is.
So on this, let's see, let me go back to that slide. Where is it? Okay, so on that link there, it shows you, there was like a couple of different images on how the languages are spread out. I wanted to put that on the slide, but I couldn't. So it really is dependent per community. So I would say, look at your county. If you're working directly with different groups, then that's how you would find that information out. And I think like Aurora, you've met with folks in Aurora, they have like over 100 languages spoken in Aurora. And so it's very, very highly local dependent. Because there's, you can't just say like in this one part of Colorado, only this languages are there, because generally it's a mix. Yeah. But I found that website helpful, and there was also, someone told me at one point that they were creating a resource that showed like the top languages that were spoken like per county potentially. And so I'll look and see if I can find that again.
Okay.
I thought that would be helpful. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, my question's gonna meander a little bit. Thank you so much for all the information on effective community engagement. But in this instance, and there was something on your first slide, and I think there was a bill being brought forward, but to put the community engagement and the community education and the collaborative solution making on the community as the primary focus of, educating and getting clean water to individuals. Is there a missing piece here that I'm missing? Like, why is the responsibility on the consumer to learn how to get access to clean water rather than, doing everything to lobby for a bill that holds these landowners accountable, or are both happening simultaneously? Because it seems to me like like some lord, like they get to just step away from this, and the communities supposed to start to solve the problem.
Exactly.
Burden shifting, yeah, well, I guess because you are putting so much effort as the Colorado Water Center into this, trying to help get the community to solve the problem and help people understand their water. I guess I'm curious why 100% of your efforts or 90% of your efforts aren't going into changing federal or changing legislation.
Yeah, so, our role has not been to directly recommend bills that pass. Our roles are to listen to the community, better understand what their needs are, and then to provide, so for example, back to this here. So for the example, this Water Quality Act, community members were asking us like, well, how long is this gonna take? And so then going back to our partners and being like, we need to provide, for this bill in particular, we need to show people that it's not gonna take 20 years. People are having issues right now, and so that's when we're coming in and talking with community members, it takes a while to pass a bill. But people need help right now, and so we're stepping into that space to say, like, how can we help right now, while at the same time raising awareness? Because awareness, I think, is one of the biggest issues. People don't know that this is a huge issue in our community around mobile home parks. And then those questions start getting asked, because we need that at the exact same time. But the regulatory pieces, like whose responsibility is that? Is that DOLA's? Is that the city of Fort Collins? Is that the state? And so by bringing these people together, what I have seen is that question has kind of fallen through there's not like an answer, and it's like nobody's responsibility. And so then it's like, okay, so now that we know, let's work together to ask that, to say, what regulation do we need? What new bills do we need? But at the same time saying, we are hearing directly from communities. Yes,
Thank you.
so
for
I'm
that.
saying that is critical.
Yeah.
That is critical. But the piece and the role that we play as a convener, and saying what education is here, what education is missing, and then how can we bring people together from all of these different roles to address this issue.
Yeah, I would say just elevating.
Yes.
That community voice, because it wasn't really being heard.
Are the landowners participative in this conversation, and or are they fighting to have to do anything, or?
There have been a number of town halls, not town halls, stakeholder meetings, held by CDPHE, and there's one coming up soon. So they have posed questions in those. I don't work for CDPHE, and so I'm not sure if they're having direct conversations with landowners or not, or how those are going. But I postulate that there's probably resistance to having to make these changes.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you could ask that question on pretty much any social and environmental issue we face, so. That's where, with market failures, environmental externalities, like that's where civil society steps in, right? So just a comment, and yeah, with regards to like public meetings and stuff like that, a lot of these communities a lot of the community members like either don't know their rights, there's language barriers, they work 3, 4, 5 jobs, like there's a lot of barriers to them getting involved politically. Now with our current climate, it's gonna be really scary, so I just want to say a thank you for everything you've done to help.
And I will also say retaliation is a huge concern.
Yeah.
And that residents are afraid to speak up and they were afraid before the new administration and the new kind of all of that. But they have, I'll give you a couple of examples. So water bills, a community member showed me 2 water bills, the same unit. 1 month it was $24 for water, the next month it was $200. And nobody is holding those people accountable, so they can go and they can complain to their office. And so what has happened is the office will be like, oh, okay, you complained, I'll put it on someone else's bill. So that happens, but then they've also had instances where they complain and then they'll get like a retaliatory notice on something else. So they'll be like, you are in violation of X, and so we have seen all of those things. And so that's why I'm very careful in presentations. I don't name communities. I don't name people. And this, in general, the work that we're doing needs to be very intentional and making sure that I'm not speaking for the mobile home park communities. I'm more elevating what the concerns that they have shared with me and then bringing people together to work on this issue. Yes.
The indented bullet on this slide is, I have a lot of questions around how is this done? Or are there any examples of communities that have remediated this issue and like how are they coming up with the funding to do that? Because I would imagine a lot of these large commercial property owners, like their solution is to sell.
That's something that I have brought up, because that is a concern. From the way that the timeline, I don't think we've gotten, so my understanding that it's so early that that issue probably hasn't come to a head yet, where it's like the testing has been done. Okay, now you have to fix it. Well, now you have 120 days. Okay, well, now you have this long to actually fix it. So then it becomes the funding. And it's my understanding that there aren't a lot of funding streams right now to repair infrastructure. And so that is something that I was concerned about. Some communities have bought the mobile home park, like the individuals, like there's resident-owned mobile home parks, but, and there are nonprofits and organizations that are helping residents purchase the mobile home parks, but that's really, really expensive. And then,
To mobilize to do that.
yeah, it's really expensive, and then they inherit all of these problems. So, you know, this is why we need to be really thoughtful. We need to have full community involvement in all of these issues and concerns so that we don't create more problems for folks who are the ones that are the most marginalized, to deal with that.
And did you say that the gap is that there's no institution that is holding landowners accountable to this past legislation? Is that the gap, right?
I can't say for certain that's the case.
Okay.
So I wouldn't I can't say that for sure. Well, I will say is that it's been very challenging for people. So when their water gets shut off, they're told different things. They were told that they had to contact, DOLA when their water got shut off. And then people, you know, they were given a number to call DOLA, but then those complaints weren't going anywhere. And then they were told, okay, now you need to call your water provider. Well, people don't know who their water provider is because they don't get a bill from their from the municipality to get a bill from their mobile home park. And so they asked me, they said, is there, can you just tell us who our water providers are? I'm like, sure, that should be easy. No. It is not easy and even finding the district. And I was like, why isn't this easy? You know? And so I had to I had to call different water providers to be like, is this in your district? And then I found that some mobile home parks are split water providers, you know? So again, kind of coming back to your point that the onus keeps being on the resident to try to figure this out. So, you know, there is CDPHE, there's DOLA, but I haven't heard regulatory from the municipality standpoint, the city. And so I think these are things that we need to bring all the people in the room and say, whose responsibility is it? And what can be them.
I'll just add an additional layer of complexity and distrust is with the testing. And so, you know, basically it's if you want to have your water tested, you have to pay for it. Then you send it in and then, or you can request to have your water tested, but it's seeing the results and seeing water quality results through CDPHE is essentially not, it either is really difficult to find the information and or the information is not really relevant. It's this is the water quality average over whatever amount of time. It's not really specific to what the users are looking for, and you can provide more information.
Yeah, so on this website, they do have a list of results from the mobile home parks they've tested so far. I haven't checked the link in a little bit, but when I was looking at it, they didn't provide the dates of the test. And so for folks to be I had brown water on this date, you know, water tests can change from day, you know, morning to night, from day to day. And so really it's just one piece of information at one point in time. And so if folks can't even see the date it was tested, then they can correlate that to what they're finding in their own water. And then the test results will be there, but I don't know how to read a water test. And so that's something else that we've been looking at is how do we provide a guide on like, what should you see in your water? What's an acceptable level? Like, how do you know? And then to be able to kind of figure out what those tests mean. So, yes.
Kind of looking at the outreach part of it. Like you were talking about more so like the community outreach part. Is there ever a threshold that you can say you've reached and you've successfully kind of educated or reached enough in the community? So for instance, I heard a conversation recently between the planning commissioner and a planning director where the planning commissioner said, you only had 104 respondents out of 12,500 residents. That's not enough. You weren't successful. Is there a threshold in your mind, like 10%, 20%, 30% that would indicate a successful sort of stakeholder community outreach program?
Be like, everyone's educated, we can all quit. There's always people moving into the area. There's always people older there's always people that need to be educated. There are social science will say, at this percentage of respondent is like best practice. I think it's like 50 or
No,
like 20.
no, it's like 15.
Well, it's like,
For that though, it's like more of like, can you get statistical significance?
yes, the statistical
Which is
significance.
less relevant for like, how much, are you engaging your community?
Yeah. I wouldn't, putting a number on it, like, okay, if you've reached this percentage of people, then like, we're good. I would just like caution against that because there'll always be people who have not engaged or not responded, or you haven't adequately reached. Surveys have a super low response rates. We get surveys all the time and it's like, please. And so it's difficult to get people to fill those out. I think a lot also because it's like that information a lot of times goes into a void. Where it's like, well, I spend all this time filling out the survey, well, then what? Then what happens?
Just kind of following up on that, you had a great slide for like how to get people to engage like in a physical space.
Yeah.
But how do you have ideas of how to get more engagement on surveys or other types of public outreach that are not in a physical space? If that makes sense.
So I'm working on a project right now and I'm sure others will probably be able to share the things that they've done as well. But providing incentives like if you fill out the survey, we'll enter you into a drawing. If you do this interview, like I'm on a project right now where we're doing this, you fill out the survey, you get entered to a drawing. If you come to this special, it's going to be like a community meeting, then if you do an interview, then there'll be provide food, we'll provide gift cards, we'll provide, it's again, back to that valuing people's input and participation. So a lot of like gift card incentives have been popular. So that was specific to the survey. Was there another like space you were thinking of?
I think the surveys mainly are probably a place where most people in this room struggle to get, like Nathan was just talking about.
Yeah.
Out of 12,000 people, how many? 104.
Yeah.
So.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why you do surveys and focus groups and phone calls and talking on donors and community events, because I feel like surveys are always underrepresented.
Yeah. And we're
People are
going,
over surveyed to death. It's like, oh, great, another survey, so that has no effect, but, depending on like those underserved populations, we found, that face-to-face contact, and so if they know, and it's not just one time. We have a community engagement manager who goes out like to the Immigration and Refugee Center 12 to 20 times, just, getting to be a familiar face so that there's some trust. I think we had the State of the City last week, 2 weeks ago. I think we had close to 60 people from our refugee center attend, which was massive, and I was so happy for that output. So, but it's thanks to that, individual attention and going out and making that effort and making those connections to build that trust, especially from a governmental
Yeah.
agency.
I think too, having those community ambassadors, I know like we folks, there's representation from the mobile home parks who are well respected, they speak Spanish, they're in the community, because I think even if it's somebody who's in your governmental entity, there's kind of a warranted lack of trust among some of those folks to have a government perspective. So, I think Fort Collins has had relatively good luck having ambassadors within, embedded in those communities.
Yeah, and then showing up at events that are in those communities as well. And having like the swag, we do like swag and booths at conferences or events, community events, and so that's another way to.
Do you find that that's helpful, like to get, to get folks coming in, or is that like a waste of resources to just acquire like tchotchke, junkie giveaway, you know? I'm not saying
It is amazing.
And if so, okay, so items of higher value rather than.
Thank you.
Pencils.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing, is that where, like, investing more, like, you get more out of it, is that a thought with the swag?
Yeah. So the survey, okay, last thing I'll say is the survey that we're doing, on this project that's around landscape, transformation. We went to conferences where the industry folks were there, and so we had the swag there, and then we could